The wind howled through the trees of a small, quiet town nestled in the heart of the American Midwest. It was a crisp autumn evening, the kind where the sun dips behind the horizon and casts long shadows over the streets. The air felt thick, as if the very earth was holding its breath. This was no ordinary town. For years, it had been a place where everyone knew each other's name, a community bound together by shared history and tight-knit relationships. But that night, October 3rd, 1998, everything would change. As darkness fell, the phone rang at the police station. A frantic call came in from a local resident, her voice trembling. I think I saw something terrible. It's the Miller house. There's a body in the yard. The phone line crackled, and for a moment, silence hung in the air. Officer John Bradford, a seasoned veteran of the force, grabbed his jacket and rushed out of the station. He had been around long enough to know that when the phone call started with that kind of panic, things weren't going to end well. He wasn't prepared for the nightmare that lay ahead. As he drove down the dimly lit streets, Officer Bradford's thoughts raced. The Millers were a well-known family in the town. The house they lived in had stood for generations, but no one could have predicted the gruesome crime that would unfold there. As he approached the scene, his headlights caught the flash of a white sheet draped over a body lying motionless on the front lawn. A crowd had already gathered, whispering among themselves. Bradford forced his way through the onlookers, his heart pounding in his chest. He lifted the sheet, and there she was, the lifeless body of 18-year-old Sophie Miller. Before we dive deeper into the haunting details of this investigation, make sure to hit the subscribe button, like this video, and share it with anyone you think will be interested in this chilling true crime case. Your support helps keep us going and brings more gripping stories like this one to the forefront. If you're new to the channel, be sure to catch up with our previous videos to immerse yourself fully in these gripping tales. Now, let's jump right back into our story. Sophie was a local high school senior, a bright, promising young woman with a future ahead of her. She had been beloved by everyone who knew her, a high achiever with dreams of leaving their sleepy town and attending college in the city. But now, she lay in the yard, her blood staining the once pristine grass. Who could have done this? Bradford muttered under his breath. His mind raced as he began to assess the situation. The front door was wide open, the interior lights flickering as though someone had been in a hurry to leave. The evidence was sparse, but the murder was undeniably brutal. No one had heard anything unusual. No one had seen anything suspicious. Where's the family? Bradford asked one of the onlookers, trying to make sense of it all. The witness shook their head. The parents are inside, but they don't know. They just came home from dinner. Inside the house, Sophie's parents, Rebecca and Henry Miller, were oblivious to the horrors that had unfolded just outside their front door. When Bradford delivered the news, their screams echoed through the house, a sound that would haunt him forever. This was just the beginning. As the investigation into Sophie Miller's death began, it quickly became apparent that this was no ordinary crime. The town of Crystal Springs, once untouched by tragedy, now found itself at the center of a nightmare. Detective Sarah Lawson, a determined investigator with years of experience, was called in to lead the case. The small, peaceful town was about to unravel in a way no one could have ever imagined. Sophie's death left the townspeople shaken, but it also uncovered a web of secrets that no one had seen coming. Sophie's life had seemed perfect on the surface, but beneath the facade, she had been struggling with a dangerous relationship and a secret that no one knew about. Detective Lawson's first step was to interview Sophie's parents. They were devastated, of course, but their answers didn't add up. Sophie's father, Henry, appeared distraught, but the way his eyes shifted when questioned about Sophie's whereabouts the night of a murder raised red flags. Was it grief or something else? But Henry Miller wasn't the only suspect. The more Detective Lawson dug into Sophie's life, the more complex the case became. Sophie had recently ended a long-term relationship with her boyfriend, Travis, who had a history of violence. Friends described him as possessive and aggressive, and his whereabouts on the night of the murder remained unclear. Was Sophie's death the result of domestic dispute gone horribly wrong, or was there something more sinister at play? With no witnesses, no clear motive, and a growing list of potential suspects, the case became a maze of confusion and uncertainty. Detective Lawson scoured the Miller house for evidence, carefully combing through the rooms where Sophie had spent her last moments. There were no signs of forced entry. Sophie had known her killer. This wasn't a random attack. But what was the motive? As the investigation progressed, more disturbing facts began to surface. Sophie had been receiving anonymous threats in the weeks leading up to her death. Some of these threats were traced back to a mysterious figure, a man with no clear ties to the town, whose name kept popping up in Sophie's journal. The man, named Derek Hayes, had been a brief fling in Sophie's life but had disappeared soon after their brief affair. Now, it seemed as though he had reappeared, and his sudden presence in Sophie's life raised even more questions. Lawson traced Derek Hayes to a nearby city, where he had a criminal record involving assault and robbery. But despite her best efforts, Derek had vanished again, leaving behind nothing but questions. Had Sophie known too much? Was she being stalked by a dangerous man from her past? The investigation began to stall. Key suspects were disappearing, and evidence was sparse. The town, which had once seemed so innocent, was now shrouded in fear. The media caught wind of the case, and the story of Sophie Miller's murder spread across the nation. People were captivated by the mystery, speculating about the reasons behind her death and debating over the possible suspects. Theories ran rampant. Was it the jealous ex-boyfriend Travis, consumed by rage and jealousy? Was it Derek Hayes, the shadowy figure from her past who had seemingly come back to haunt her? Or was there someone else entirely, a neighbor, a friend, or even someone close to the Miller family? Months passed, and the investigation continued, but the case remained unsolved. As more pieces of the puzzle were uncovered, the story of Sophie Miller's murder took on a life of its own, with new theories emerging from every corner. Some believe that Sophie's father, Henry Miller, was hiding something. Perhaps his grief was an act masking guilt. Others point the finger at Sophie's best friend, Lily, who had been the last person to see Sophie alive. Some even speculated that the murder was a result of a drug deal gone wrong, though no evidence of this was ever found. Despite the efforts of law enforcement and the media's attention, no one was ever charged with Sophie Miller's murder. Her death remained an open case, the truth locked away behind a veil of secrecy. As years went by, Sophie's case became one of the most talked about unsolved murders in the country. The investigation never truly ended, but the leads dried up and the Miller family was left to mourn their daughter without ever knowing the full truth. Sophie Miller's story raised difficult questions. Was the truth buried, or did the investigation miss something crucial? Could the killer still be out there, watching the family who had once been so close? And could this case serve as a warning, teaching us that even in the most idyllic towns, evil can hide just beneath the surface? Despite all the advances in forensic science, advancements in investigative techniques, and the passage of time, Sophie's killer remained free. The murder that shook a small town, the crime that altered the lives of so many, was still shrouded in mystery. For now, the case remains open. The questions remain unanswered. But one thing is certain. The story of Sophie Miller is not just a tale of tragedy. It is a reminder that sometimes the truth remains hidden. And even in a country as vast as the United States, some dark secrets refuse to be uncovered. As the years passed, Detective Sarah Lawson couldn't shake the haunting images of Sophie Miller's final moments. Sophie's family, despite the pain and torment they endured, never stopped hoping for closure. They never stopped waiting for justice. But as time marched on, the hope began to fade. Sophie's case became one of the many tragic stories of the unsolved, a case filed away in the forgotten corners of history. In 2005, an unexpected turn of events gave Detective Lawson a glimmer of hope. An anonymous letter arrived at the police station. It was postmarked from a nearby state, and the handwriting was shaky, almost frantic. The letter claimed that Sophie's murder had been a crime of passion, a lover's quarrel turned deadly, but the person who sent the letter wouldn't give their name. Still, they mentioned the name Travis, Sophie's ex-boyfriend, something Lawson had not heard in years. It was a detail that had been dismissed early in the investigation, but the letter reignited something in Lawson's mind. Could Travis, the boy with a history of violence and jealousy, have been more involved than initially suspected? Detective Lawson set out to find Travis. It wasn't easy. He had moved away, changing his name, cutting all ties to Crystal Springs. But in 2006, after years of searching, Lawson located him living in another state. When Travis was questioned about Sophie's murder, he denied any involvement, but there was something in his demeanor that set off alarms. His story seemed rehearsed, Too perfect. And as Lawson pressed him on the night Sophie died, his nervousness betrayed him. But it was still circumstantial evidence, nothing concrete. The case remained frustratingly cold. For Sophie's family, the years of waiting for justice took a toll. The Miller family's life became one long battle with grief, with many hoping that one day the truth would be revealed. But as the years turned into decades, it seemed more and more likely that Sophie's murder would become just another chapter in the long list of unsolved cases that plagued the country. Sophie Miller's story was now a part of America's unsettling legacy, an emblem of unsolved crimes, families left in limbo, and justice that slipped through the cracks. Every year, on the anniversary of her death, her parents would light a candle in her memory, holding on to the faint hope that someone, somewhere, would come forward with the truth. Despite all the advances in forensic science, advancements in investigative techniques, and the passage of time, Sophie's killer remained free. The murder that shook a small town, the crime that altered the lives of so many, was still shrouded in mystery. For now, the case remains open. The questions remain unanswered. But one thing is certain. The story of Sophie Miller is not just a tale of tragedy. It is a reminder that sometimes the truth remains hidden. And even in a country as vast as the United States, some dark secrets refuse to be uncovered. Sophie Miller's death was a tragedy, but the failure to bring her killer to justice only added to the pain. This case serves as a haunting reminder that sometimes the truth we seek may forever remain elusive, leaving families torn apart and communities forever altered. Could Derek, Carl, or Travis really be the key to solving Sophie's murder? Or will we, like so many other unsolved cases, never know the full truth? Stay tuned for more investigations, and thank you for watching.